Welcome to the Funnel Reboot podcast, brought to you by Marketing What's New. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot. Today's episode is for any of us who have a hand in corporate websites, covering what we must get right for our site to please our visitors. First, let me remind you that the deadline for the old Google Analytics is approaching. To not be caught off guard in June of 2023, you need to transition your website to Google Analytics 4. Information on how to push forward fast onto GA4 comes later in the show, and it's also in the show notes. Let's get straight to today's show. Designing websites involves dealing with domain registrars, hosting providers, CMSs, page templates, and scripts that run things like forms. And we haven't even mentioned the things that visitors see, like text, images, and audio-visual assets. It's a lot. My guest has set out to take the complexity out of all this. Knowing that we learn best when we're absorbed in a story, he rolled all his principles into a book geared for anyone who's been handed the keys to a website or asked to work with a web designer. Our guest is the founder of Blue Eclipse, a Canadian web agency. His passion is making the web a better place, and he has been building websites for over 20 years. He's a graduate of McMaster University with a double major in multimedia and communications and a minor in English. And he lives in Ottawa with his wife, son, and a barking dog. Outside of building websites, he likes to listen to music and play the occasional game of hockey. Let's go hear from Patrick Villemaire. So glad to welcome Patrick Villemaire. Welcome, Patrick. I am so glad to. Today we are going to take an unconventional look at the websites that are around us and what it takes to make them, what it takes to remake them. And you have an excellent lens into how to do this. In fact, you wrote a book about how to do this, but you didn't just make a standard how to, fix or build a website.
Survival guide.
What kind of a book did you write?
It's not here's the 1, 2, 3 steps on how to build a website. It's a story. It's an adventure. Because really what a website is a story, right? It's telling someone's story and conveying that to, the customer or the business. So what I did was I actually wrote a 100-page manuscript of a regular how-to book, and I have it sitting on my desk. And I was like, I don't want to read this. I don't want to edit it. Like, how is someone else going to want to read it unless they're looking for something very technical, very specific, right? So what I did. Yeah, so
yeah.
I was thinking,
who's less interested than the author?
That I can get it done, that I'm not going to hate myself going through the process, and that other people are going to enjoy it. So I made it into a story, and so we have our character Steve, and he's the intern for a huge corporation, and he's basically day one on the job. They say, we need you to rebuild every website in the world, basically, right? So he gets overwhelmed. He goes into the forest. He gets hit in the head with a coconut and transforms himself into a Sasquatch, and then he goes through all. It could be. Either way,
we're not sure. It could be a vision that he has, but
a fantastical journey, and he's going through SEO, content writing, design, responsive, all your kind of key practices, but in a kind of a Seussical adventure where it's a story that's being told, and the idea is that someone can read in 15 minutes, not think about all the things they're learning, and then go back through and say, this is the plan. This is my survival guide of what I need to do to make my business better, to help my business grow digitally. Less focused on technology, but more about it's about changing the way you think about web, right? It's not just a website. There's so much more to
it. For sure. I just want to bring in one other element that I thought was pretty key at the beginning of the book. While he's still very much inside the job, he walks into this enormous room, and there are a lot of dashboards facing him, and even some computer printouts with even more numbers. And it's evident that the websites aren't producing the desired effect that they should. But the issue is there's no clear idea of what those websites were meant to do in the first place, right? So maybe the first thing that Steve has that's percolating in his mind before he really goes out to clear his head is
where do you even
how do I know what we're striving for?
Like one of the things, Glenn, that really I'm trying to solve and help people solve is, when you come to a website and you look at it, it's like so well coded, it's so well designed, you're like, this is just a beautiful piece of work. And then you start reading it and you're like, I don't know what this is, right? Like, I don't know where I am, what am I supposed to do here? And it's taking that step back and trying to figure out what is the business, what are the goals, what are your customers looking for, and how can I take them on that journey? So really, it's the art of storytelling, through, my book, which is, illustrated, and then, the customer journey, which is, what is their story and what are they going to go through? So it's changing the thought processes about web design.
Right. We're folding stories on top of stories here. But you're right. Steve is literally, he's got to get outside the building. He has to, instead of doing what we would want to do, which is get our hands on the keyboard and start coding or sitting beside someone who's doing that, you say, no, step out, get way back, start to think about why your company even was created to help solve a customer's problem. Figure out those things. And then you say that we should start like assembling those and just throw them out. You even bring up a mood board, so tell us kind of in that early, even just ideation session, what kinds of things we're doing will eventually help us get to a website, but that at the beginning seem to have no relation.
Are we doing WordPress? Are we doing Squarespace? Like, what technology are we using? What plugins are we using? It doesn't matter, right? It's about the vision, which is where the mood board, comes in. It's a great place to start. You're looking at, your layouts, your colors, like rounded edges, sharp corners, like what is that vision that you're looking to portray? Because when you think about like branding, web design, print, it's about consistency, right? And the mood board sets that tone to say, like, if we're doing soft colors and round edges, like if that's our vision, everything that we do needs to follow that, because that's going to be, creating our brand.
Sure. Would it be, if we forget about web stuff for a second, like corners, are we bringing in some of the traditional elements? Maybe we're pulling out the story of the origin of the company that our founder tells, or we're pulling out maybe an excellent idea of how we helped a client, or maybe why our corporate colors on our printed material are the colors they are. Are we grabbing those things?
Like it's all about values, and everything needs to tie back to those values. And I had to go through my own journey of figuring out what are my values, what are my corporate values for the business, right? And then that transforms, how do we want that to look and feel and breathe? Because it's really a living organism, and you're what you're pulling together, like your values, your mission statement, you're looking at like your colors, your overall look and feel. It goes beyond, it all really goes back to the story, right? What story are we trying to tell, and how do we tell that? And can we assemble everything in this kind of mood board, vision board that's going to take us down that path?
Do you see websites as a place where clients can choose their own adventure by going between different pages of the site,
you have to guide them down that path, right?
Kind of forming the story in their head as they go?
To choose from, because the last thing you want is to give them, like, here's 5 links to click on, go build your own adventure, right? You want to build them down the path, and if it's not A, then it's B, and lead them down that. So you're taking them where you want them to go, but they also have the choice to say, this is what's important to me. And obviously, like anyone can use a menu to go, veer off, right? But if we're thinking about the journey, and I I think it was Steve Krug's book, Don't Make Me Think, which had a huge, impact on my life when I was in university of, building websites, designing and thinking of, it's that process of, don't make me think. Like I often think about like in a restaurant, you get the menu and they give you like 18, choices, right? And you're looking at it, you don't even know where to look. And, at the end you just, like, I'll get the chicken, maybe. Oh no, exactly. So it's like, how can you get that journey, right?
They're all in
Get them down
7-point
that
font,
path, give
right?
them some options so they can personalize and customize it. But really, at the end of the day, as a business, you're probably selling one or two things, right? You want someone to get in touch with you, or you want them to buy a product, right? So like if that's your end goal, how can you inform them? Make sure that they get the information that they need to make a well informed decision, and end up filling in your contact form, for example.
I'm sure veteran marketers have been nodding to the last thing you said about how you need to lead them. But perhaps people who are outside of marketing or fairly new to it are wondering, well, how, are we being fatalists here? Or are we just, ramming this down their throats? Can you, do you believe that by laying out these desired actions and doing as Steve said, not making them think, that we're actually doing a favor for them? That, we're saying to them, if you're a customer like this, we've helped people like you.
No,
Here's
for
how,
sure. It's
and
all
here's
about
the
that
next
clarity,
thing
right?
they normally
So it's
take
that
as a
clarity
step
to the
towards
customer
working
of,
with
I'm in the
us.
right spot. I'm going to get what I need from here, and that's really the most important thing. And the funny thing is, like, we're talking about leading people down the path, but one of the best things I've heard, best analogy is, everyone's talking about the funnel. People are just going to drop down the funnel and give us their money, right? But really, you have to flip that funnel upside down. It's like a vacuum. You're trying to suck them up through the funnel, but the gravity is everything is pulling them out, right? There's all that resistance, and you have to get them up all the way through the funnel. So like, to say like it's a funnel, it just makes it sound so easy, right? Like, build a website and they'll give you money, right? It's not that simple. So there's all these things, like movement on the page, like unclear messaging, too many options, not enough options, like that fine balance. That's everything. All these little things are taking them away from the end goal, and you have to like fight to try and get them down that path to get them into the end of the funnel.
Right. So if we're going to do this, and let's say we haven't even yet talked to a web developer or an outside agency, a few other things that you recommend that we pull together first are a rough set of a list of things that we would talk about. And these are like proto pages, right? They may end up each of them being their own page. We might merge or separate some, but it's gonna be a list that eventually someone's going to place into a sitemap. You mentioned some early photos, or even you just grab something off of image search. It's obviously not what you're going to use, especially if it's a stock photo and you haven't paid for it, but you want to pull these things together to give somebody an idea. And then if you can, even just the beginnings of copy within each of those pages, right? Could you tell me if we need to get too worried about how someone's going to lay this out? Or, here we are in 2022. Is that process even, a highly crafted process, or
Yeah,
have most of the
in terms of like
platforms just made
building
that
a custom website,
invisible to
we're
us
always
and they just do it?
reusing parts and pieces. So like we don't need to start from scratch. Where you need to start from scratch is your content, and that's really the most important thing, right? Like, it's like, someone will come to me and they can say, build me a website. I'm like,
Yeah.
sure, but like, why are we building it? What is the outline? What is the flow? What are we trying to achieve? It's looking at the big picture, and then we can go to our library and like grab all the blocks that we need, pull together super quick wireframes that are even like, we have our tool Website Fuel, which is like a template builder, and we can grab like pre-made all the pieces that we need for a website. They all have the working code. We can display them as wireframes. We can present them to the client how it makes sense to them, export it, and give them a working website in minutes. But the thing that we can't do in minutes is we can't define the customer journey. We can't understand what we're doing, what the value is, And like, there's no point in doing anything until you have a content outline. You don't need to have your content fully created, but you need to know, like, what is important to you, what is important to the customer, and marry that and have that balance before you can actually do anything meaningful.
Right. So many people get the cart before the horse, right? They say, all right, I know I want something with a right column layout, and so I have to go looking for a picture that's about this size, and I have to look for copy that's about this big. You're saying, no, move it the other way around. Get settled on what you need,
Yeah,
and then
if we want to
those
build a website
blocks
in a day,
will just
we can build
be,
a five, ten page
we'll find
website
them.
in a day if we know, if we have all the imagery together, the values, the vision, that mood board, and if we have the copy. And obviously, with copy, if you're not writing for web, it's fine, because that can be adapted as it starts getting, becoming on the page, right? But you need to have those words put together, the headings. You don't need to know SEO per se, but you need to know who are you helping, why are you helping them, what your offer is.
Yep. And we're going to talk about SEO in a minute. We're going to take a very quick break, and then we'll be right back to get into that. Need to break away from our conversation for a message about something that almost every marketer is affected by. Google moving us from Universal Analytics, or UA, to Google Analytics 4. After June 30, 2023, GA4 will be the only way to see our analytics. Its data is all new, too, meaning there's no easy way to bring UA reports you knew and loved to the GA4 interface. Since GA4 only starts collecting data once it's installed, companies wonder how they'll get everything, both past and future data, reported through this new interface. Is the only option to make it all over from scratch? No, there's another way. All the web analytics data that's in the interface is also available in Google's cloud database. B2B companies have data in silo systems that could be combined with this raw data to see their entire funnel. This enables you to fetch answers you'd never get from the old Google Analytics. You can use data anywhere in your company, visualize interactions with prospects to better learn how they like to be treated. Have people who always ask for the same data? Make an automated dashboard for them. The learning curve for marketers here is steep. That's why I am leading a live workshop to get you there. The GA Fast Forward workshop goes beyond installing GA4 and setting up conversions with Tag Manager. You'll learn how to normalize data coming from ad platforms and internal systems and pipe them to Google Cloud. Google Data Studio will then present it in the best way for getting your story across. By working directly on the tools for 2 days plus post-workshop support, you'll become very confident in using them. The first workshop is in Ottawa this October. It's also being held in other cities, so put yourself down to be notified when yours comes up. Those who want to take advantage of the Google Analytics stack should check out this program by visiting gafastforward.com. You can spell forward with the numeral 4 in the middle, as in GA4, or the normal spelling of the words to get there. That's it for the message. And we're back. So Patrick, we were just going through kind of the things that we need to assemble for a website. When we start getting into the content, there's a couple things that I know that your main character points out, and these start to frame kind of what the site is describing, and then they get into more of how it's doing it. And this will, bring us into UX and SEO. But I found it interesting. You have a part in there where he's talking about what the company does, like an about us. But for service companies, it's said, tell them what you don't do as well as what you do. I thought that was really interesting. Can you tell me more on that?
Yeah. So I mean, it's that fine balance, right? Like there's those two ways to communicate, clearly to your customer. This is what it is. This isn't what it is, right? So say for example, like a chiropractor.
Okay.
Good example, we work a lot with health clinics, so the chiropractors I always find a really good example. So, we're going to, work on your back, fix your back pain, but we're not going to, give you a massage, for example, because that'd be a massage therapist. So if
Yep.
you're looking at, like a clinic, for example, this is what we do. This is what we'll offer, the service that we offer for you. This is what we don't offer for you. And, this is how, kind of everything comes together. And like, even like in terms of like web design, right? Like we don't do SEO work. Like I understand SEO work, we'll do best practices, but we do design, development, anything that goes outside of the core services, we have partners. If you want, detailed analytics, we don't do that. We'll get your base set up, but we'll, bring in a partner to do that because we know what our strengths are and we're going to stick to those strengths. And that's why we have a network, right? So,
Mm.
if I'm clear, portraying my offer to a customer, I can say these are the things we do. This is what you're not going to get, and then I won't say you're not going to get SEO, for example. We'll give you a base level SEO, but if you want advanced SEO and ongoing maintenance and support, we don't do that. But we have contacts we can refer you to.
Websites have really become that. They are the, I often envision them almost like the dough that forms the basis for a pizza. They have so much that gets loaded on top of them, but and more than any one person, maybe even one firm, can be an expert at. They're just a medium, right? And I think that's great that we can then be open. You can, in your case, as a web developer, saying, okay, we're open about what we do and what we don't do. And, don't take any offense. You're still going to get a pizza, but, these are the things we have as toppings. These are the things we don't. And every company should start to think about their website as being able to do that. And it will, I hope, attract the kind of customers that say, well, that's what I want.
Yeah, you want someone that's the best in certain things, right? You don't want someone that's I am okay at 20 things, so I'm going to give you okay level of service across the board, right? Like I want to say like what I really do at the end of the day, like in terms of my company, we're not going to give you the best design or the best code. We're going to give you really good code, really good design. I'm not saying that we're not going to do a good job, but what we're going to be the best at is the thinking, right? And that's where we've set ourselves apart and how we get business from because there's so much competition, right? Everyone's a realtor, everyone's a web designer, and it's like one or the other, right? And how do I stand out above that is I need to understand the business, I need to understand the thought processes and how to solve problems. I want to deliver solutions, right? I'm not just building a website to build a website. I'm building a website to solve problems.
Right. And so if we take, whether it's Patrick or we're talking about our character Steve, or we're talking about the listener who's kind of walking the same journey as Steve, there are some best practices that help to make the website do that function. Can you maybe just tell us a little bit about, the view that Steve has of how text should be arranged and how we should maybe provide wayfinding for people, on pages and such? What are some really simple things that people should look at their own website and, with fresh eyes go, oh, need to fix that?
Yeah, so I mean, it goes back to the flow and the journey, right? Like you start at the top. You have to clearly tell them what the page is, whether it's an about page, home page, a buy purchase page. Doesn't matter. You have to tell them, they're in the right spot. That's the first thing, right? Check, move them down. You want to use your headings and you want to use your keywords in your heading. So going to a little bit of SEO, right?
Yep.
So chiropractor, for example, like chiropractor in Canada versus chiropractor in Ottawa versus chiropractor in the PN versus chiropractor in Barhaven. So
Yeah.
like understanding how people are going to relate to the content and say like check, I'm in the right spot. Can I use icons to take the place of like 20 words, right? Can I give them that visual in a clean way with a heading maybe paired to it? So it's really you want to someone to be able to scan the page because no one has attention anymore, right? They're going to go down the page and be like yes, 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 and then one or two buttons. Primary. You don't want equal weighted buttons either, right? You want a primary button, say like like a nice gold button, and then like a secondary option if you have one that's like an outline. So it's not
Not as strong. Yeah.
you're capturing their attention and saying, well, if not that, then here's option B. right? What I've seen so many times, and I've seen this on startups. I was looking at a website the other day. They had 4 buttons in their banners, all the same color, all the same font size. And you look at it, and you're just like, I don't even know what to look at. Like your eye and your mind's just getting so confused, and you just want to leave, right? So this is where it's about the flow, and you want to give them just enough information to keep giving them those little check marks. Yes, I can keep going down. You have some buttons and links, that might take them off, kind of the build your own adventure, but really, like always focusing to the end goal. And the most important thing that a lot of people miss is when you get to the bottom of the page, don't just have a footer. That's another chance to say, hey, you made it to the bottom of the page. That's awesome. Clearly you're interested. Now go, to our contact page, or fill in this contact form, or book an appointment, or purchase, or learn about our services. Right? A lot of people just say, I got my value prop, my banner, I got my services all laid out nicely. My about text, everything is so lovely laid out, and now you're at the end, right? And if someone's made it all the way to the end of a website, clearly they're engaged, so take advantage of that.
Or yeah, I mean, if that page is trying to be its own item, it's down to the atomic level, right? This is what this page is about. You ought to have another page that speaks to the next thing that it would, somebody wants if they read this page. And if I look at every streaming service, when I'm done watching something, they never miss that chance to say, all right, well, then you watch this, you probably would like to watch that.
Yeah, like imagine watching like a YouTube video and then there's nothing next, right? Like, could you imagine YouTube saying, there's
I've never reached the end of YouTube. Funny.
So I mean, it's and that's the thing too. Like, look at like in your day-to-day lives, what's Apple doing, what's Google doing, what's Netflix doing? These little things that you can pick up on. And that's a good example. Don't just end the conversation. The only reason they would you want them to leave is if they've completed the purchase, and you have nothing else to give them, right? Then you can say, I got nothing else. And probably at that point you can say, like, you made your purchase. Now share it with others, right? Like, there's another next step. You're
never done.
You fill in a booking form. You could even ask them for how was your experience, right? If you
sure,
if they did all the actions that you want, can you engage them any further? Leave us a Google review. There's different things that you can ask them if they've done your primary goal.
The homepage seems to be an area of contention, and I think it's because if I'm in a decent sized company, then we have different stakeholders, and they want the homepage to be the vehicle to get to the page that speaks about their part of the company. Do you have any tips for how we can mediate this? What is a yardstick that we can use to say, okay, well, the homepage should first look to take people here and then there and then there. Like you said, we don't want to have those 4 buttons all with equal prominence.
So excellent. I see this all the time, especially in large organizations. I remember one of my first jobs out of university. I was working on a website, and every department needed something above the fold, right? So all of a sudden you have like all these buttons and carousels, and what I always tell people is, when everything is important, then nothing is important, right? So if you have 50 buttons everywhere, then clearly none of them are important, because you have 50 of the same, like equal weighted buttons, right? So this is where it goes back to the mood board, the values, and really, like, everything needs to go back to the values at the end of the day. If your company doesn't have any values, you're screwed.
Right.
That is what's guiding you.
So you're telling me a dysfunctional company will normally end up producing a dysfunctional website.
Right. Because what happens is people either, that company doesn't have values, or they don't have that internal culture where everyone is bought into, this is the value of the business, right? And if everyone's not on the same page of this, we're all trying to achieve the same goal, because all the departments want their own thing. But if everyone's looking to the values and the goals of the company, then everything you do needs to lead you down that path towards the goals. And that's really how you rein in, senior management, board of directors, just ask them, what is your goal? What is the primary goal of the business, or the 2 primary goals? And
tell me the main KPI that we are trying to move.
Yeah. So then when this, person on the right comes over and says, like, I want to link to my bio, as the front and center thing. Does that help us get towards our goal? Yes or no? Right? Is that a no? Then maybe we need to find a different way to do that somewhere else, right? So that's really it's so simple, but people have such a hard time because they feel like fund development. I want people to give me money right now. Like product development. We want someone to go see our product. Yeah, the board and directors are saying we want people to look at our bios because I have a really cool headshot and my hair looks really good that day, right? And it's really what are we trying to do here? And if I guarantee they don't have an answer because they're all just so focused on me, right? They're not saying what is our goal.
Yeah. And this is where all of that work that you did up front is hopefully paying off because you are mirroring back to people, look, we said this is what matters, we need to stick to it.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is where you have that plan to start with. This, your website survival guide, which is why I wrote the book. And if you're not following that, then you're going to go off on tangents, and you're not going to build as an effective website as you could.
Very true. The aspect of survival that I love here, though, is that as you kind of have your character, he just goes out and he just kind of reconnects with nature. And I think that that's a great kind of a moral of this story is you already know what you need to do. Don't let the technical side of SEO, the technical side of websites steer you off course. Understand very clearly what it is you're trying to do. Even if you're a lowly, intern marketing person helping in a large company, speak from a place of authority about that and let the website form in a way that does those things. Don't let other things clutter it up. As we see with Steve being inside the business and just his head spinning with all this information and people barking at him. Just no, get separate, get clear, and then implement, right?
No, exactly. And like, if I had this book when I first started, my life would be so much easier, right? Because I could follow this because I was having this conversation the other day. I was reflecting as my career as a developer and where I started and how I kind of gone up the ranks and started my own business and my spot in the space has changed from the junior dev to kind of trying to become a thought leader and looking at the big picture. And really, like any developer, any marketing manager that wants to either advance their career, help their business, is really understanding the high level things. The technical things aren't as important, right? Like if I write the best JavaScript or PHP, no one cares. But if I can help a company meet their goals, and whether I do the work or I get someone else to do the work, it doesn't matter who does the implementation. It's the fact that we got there and we're achieving our goals. So like when you're planning your projects, is looking about the big pictures. Every single kickoff meeting I ever do, Glenn, is I always tell the customer, forget about technology. We don't care, like how complicated your ideal, vision is, right? If it's going to cost $1 million, we'll worry about that later to implement. But let's understand, where do you want to go if technology and money and time wasn't an issue? And then once we start adding in, time constraints, budget constraints, then we can say, we know where you want to go. How can we best use, your time, money, and energy to get there, in a cost-effective way that takes you down, the path that you want to go towards? Because a lot of times, people will say, okay, we got like $30,000, let's spend $20,000 on design and 10 on development, and no one's looking at, the strategy and the goals and where are we best to spend that money to meet our goals.
Or I'll take it to when. I think that there are people who say we need to change our website because we've seen this hot new CMS out there, and we think our old CMS is clunky. I don't know about you. I don't think that's a pretty flimsy reason to go through this entire process. Maybe a better reason would be we have a new corporate vision and we're about to pivot completely from what we were doing before. Maybe that would be a good reason to change your brand, change your website, change things.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm trying to promote the no mess redesign, and what really that is it's starting with the goals, right? Understanding the business values. And 99% of the time, you don't need to do a full rebuild or redesign, right? You just have
Right.
to understand what are your goals? Does your website reflect that? And maybe you just need to update 2 pages, right? Like tweak a little copy, add in a few new graphics. Maybe to meet that goals, it's just adding, maybe like at the bottom of the page, you're not adding any next steps, for example. It's super quick, easy change you can make to make a big impact. And this is kind of where things like A/B split testing come in, which we talk a little bit in the book too, right? Like
Yep.
so there's I can make assumptions of what's going to work, but then we need to test it as well, right? So like
Yep.
like a lot of times we're going to our customers and saying, let's change 3 things. Let's change the banner, like the either the messaging or the call to action. Let's look at another spot where we can add another call to action to kind of take them down the journey. And maybe we're looking at like their contact form or book an appointment form. Like kind of the when we come to forms too, it's about like long versus short, right? A
Yes.
short form is going to get more submissions. A long form is going to get less submissions, but more detailed information. So like a lot of times what we'll do is someone will come to us and they'll have like 10 questions on their form. Can we make that into a 3-question form? And then they check a box that says, for example, one of my clients that does eavesdrops, this is my favorite example. Their form, they have like 20 questions on it. It's super long, right? You
Sure.
look at it, you're like, I don't want to fill it in. So what we did is made it to like, name, email, do you want to receive a quote? Everyone checks yes, and then adds like 4 more questions, right? Like your address, some information about the building. And then it's, do you want to be present at the time of the quote? Some people say, no, I don't care, just drop it off. Some people say yes. So you click yes, and it's okay, give us, a couple of date and times where you're available. So led them down this journey. It's all about the journey, right?
Sure. They
Kind of
chose
like,
the branches. Yeah.
yeah, so they're building their own adventure. They're filling in the information, and the cool thing is, like now my client, he gets hardly any phone calls, and he cut down the back and forth because I asked him. I said, Josh, what when you're doing this back and forth with your customer, what information are you trying to collect? Let's just get this all in the form, in a way that's easy to fill out. So now you can come back and say, you know what, Saturday 10 a.m. I'll be there, right? And
Right.
that's what you want. You don't want to be like, okay, now I got your information. What's your availability? Because you've already captured that, right? So it's understanding, the thought processes, right? And how can I optimize not just the website, but also these, interactions with my customers and clients and make it, more efficient.
Sure. And I don't mean to pick on our parents, but that's how I see our parents using websites, the way that they were, 20, 25 years ago, where I'm just looking around on it for the phone number. And then I'm going to call Josh and I'm going to talk to him. Websites are way beyond that now, right? We can do all those steps that would have been necessary over a phone call.
Well, I can tell you,
Just get them in the website.
Josh took his phone number off the website because the form was working so well that he
See,
said, I don't need people calling me because it's such a waste of time, right? Like now I'm just
yeah.
going to collect all the information and get it there, and then I'll call you if I need to know anything else.
Yes, and you point out in the checklist that we need to think about our client acquisition process and our onboarding process. And websites today, you just need to think of how it works. And if you can articulate it, there's more than likely a way that you can do it right on a website and let that person self-serve.
No, for sure. And a couple of things that I want to point out, like FAQs. People love to just throw FAQs there, right? And the thing with FAQs is if your content's not written well, that's why you need FAQs. If your content is written well and you're thinking about the customer and those goals, you don't need FAQs because you've already answered all the questions in the copy and in that journey, right? So
Yeah.
it's like it's thinking about like maybe there's specific product FAQs, whatever, a little bit different, right? But if you're in a service industry, like if I'm building websites, I'm not going to put FAQ on there because I'm explaining all the steps and everything they need to know, and there really shouldn't be any FAQs about the process and what we do, what we don't do. And so it's people like to use frequently asked questions as like a cop out, right? Of like,
Yeah.
oh well, my copy is fine. I'm just going to put all these here in a big FAQ list, which someone's going to get overwhelmed and doesn't want to look at. So
Correct.
it's thinking about like like about the journey, about the messaging, and it's understanding your customer. It's not just you're not just talking about yourself. You should be talking about yourself. It's about how can I help you solve your problems, right? And it all goes back to that. It's not we build websites. It's we help you solve your problems, and we do that by building websites.
Yeah, and you began your business, or the founders that you work with began the business because they felt they had a better understanding than anybody else of what the customer's pain is. So you can use how you lay things out on the website, how you let them experience the website, to show them that, right? To almost say that you're reading their mind. I bet you want to know this right now. There's the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, I really enjoyed the book, and I have to say it's funny to me, Patrick, that we've got someone with a background as a programmer, and I'm used to programmers giving me a ton of detail on stuff, who's able to put out a short and engaging illustrated book. You yourself have made quite a journey, I could tell.
Yeah, it's been quite a process and quite a transformation, right? And it's really like just continually challenging myself, and what I've done like throughout my career is just talking with customers and clients. Like I'm not a programmer that's just sitting there just tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. I've always been asking me like why. Like I have a communications degree, multimedia degree, and an English minor. So like my universities was always understand the why, right?
Yeah.
And that's really like where I'm always looking at the bigger picture and why are we doing this? And when I'm looking at some of the developers I work with, whether it's other agencies, developers I know where I worked, people just get stuck in this one role and they're implementers. And there's nothing wrong with that, but to understand why are we doing this, it makes you code differently too, right? Like
Yes.
this is a goal that we're doing. Does it make sense for me to spend 20 hours to try and achieve
Right.
it perfectly, where I can
Right.
do it in 2 hours to 80%? And that's where the thing too is like I've done websites that have taken years to launch, and the reason is it's okay now that we see this, we want to change this and tweak, and like we're at 80%, now we're at 81%, now we're at 82%, and it's like by the end of the project, everyone hates it because they spent so
Yes.
much time on it, and that last 20%, are you really making an impact? Probably not much. And this is where like
Yeah. Or are you just raising the complexity when, you could have followed the KISS principle, just keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly. And like some of the best websites I've ever been on, I remember, like I was looking at this website and I'm like, this is the worst design website. Like it was like straight out of like, like the 1990s, it's like colored background, hard to read text. But like beyond that, I was like, this website is awesome because I know everything I need to know to make
Yeah.
my decision. Right. And it's the content and the copy and the structure made sense. The design was terrible. Like absolutely can use a refresh, and design
Sure.
brings in all of professionalism, right? Like,
Sure. But if the right person is landing on it, the good content can overcome some of that, right? They will let some of that bad design be forgiven if it's
I
helping.
mean, the design captures the attention and keeps you there. Like, but you don't come for the design, right? You're
Right.
coming for the content. The design is just what like kind of draws your attention and interest. So
Yeah.
if you can marry the two, then you're good. But if someone had to say, I only had budget to focus on one thing, or time and energy to focus on one thing, focus on the content. Like because that is the most important thing. You can put it, and we can put an image on the website, but the value of a beautiful new design website versus really good copy on
Right.
maybe a studio data website, like that's kind of where people are like, I need to completely start from scratch. Like maybe we just need to update your homepage or your banner just to make it a little bit more interactive. Maybe add some icons and like simplify it a little bit, but we don't need to
Sure.
from scratch.
That
And
sounds to me, yeah.
designers probably hate me when I think about this, right? And like,
Well, it's contrary. I mean, most people would be used to hearing from a person like you that you should have all the, widgets and, funky things. But you wrote a survival guide. You didn't write a, here are all the bells and whistles guide.
yeah, like I'm not out to win awards, right? Like I would love to win a Webby, sure, but like at the end of the day, I'm not building websites to win awards. I'm building websites to help my customers. And if they say I don't have a big budget, how can you help me? Like the designers I work with probably would hate me to say it, but I would say like let's forget about the design. Let's focus about the flow and journey, right?
Right.
And like at the end of the day, I want to do what's best for the customer and their customers. So like
Perfect.
an example. one of my clients came to me and she said, I have a guru, everyone has a guru, right? I have a guru who was looking at the website you just did for me, and they suggested that we update the mobile website. And I was like, sure, there's things we can do to condense it. We can make the 3 columns into a slider instead of stack 3 columns, right? But I'm like, what is the value of doing that? Probably nothing, right? So why would we be doing this extra work when it's not going to change the end goal, right? It's, people don't mind scrolling as long as it makes sense. So why? I'm saying I would love, I'd love to do more work with you, but this work
right. Maybe we should take a second look at the analytics to see if anybody is accessing it on a mobile device.
Yeah. Or let's that, or let's test it. If you want to make some changes, let's find a couple of things we can test to see if it's going to make a difference before we go through a big project.
Yep. If people want to find out more about the book, Patrick, or about any of the other things that you do, where can they go?
Yeah. So we have a few different websites because I build websites. So we got our agency, Blue Eclipse, so it's blueeclipse.ca.
Yep.
We got the website about the book and the website Survival Guide, which is websitesurvivalguide.com. There's also some training, some different articles, and we're going to be adding a lot more content there. And then we got our AI builder, which is kind of like the template builder. We have all the pieces, and we're kind of continually evolving this product, and that's website fuel.ca. So you can go to any of those sites, and I know you'll add the links.
I sure will. Thanks so much for being on the show.
It was great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And I am sure people got some good, refreshing views of a website here that, it shouldn't be scary, and it really comes down to the core of what you need to survive in your business. I'm sure that you've walked away with something that helps you make your funnel even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.